When these bugs and people are out of balance, there are both human and economic costs. But what about Mother Nature? Researchers recently launched an online platform to monitor the environmental cost of deforestation. I spoke with Nigel Sizer about which country is most at risk. He's a director of Global Forest Initiative at the World Resource Institute.
Well, there are several countries that are losing forests at a tremendous rate, and I would include Brazil, Indonesia, a number of other countries across the tropics. But this is actually a problem for all of us, because as we lose those forests, as they're cleared and burned, it makes a huge contribution to global warming and climate change. Forests and land use change contribute about 15% of the world's emissions of greenhouse gases. So all of us actually suffer the consequences of forest clearing around the world.
What's the biggest challenge in sort of getting that message out? Because I think the vast majority of people would generally agree with you. There's not many opponents to this. So what's the biggest challenge?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges is that most people don't actually see this problem happening in front of them. We live in cities, we live far away from forests. We've lost that connection with nature that we all depend upon.
When you talk to a government and you talk to government officials and they acknowledge the problem, what type of actions are you looking for them to take on?
So if you take governments, a key challenge for government is law enforcement. And law enforcement is expensive, especially in a country like Brazil or Indonesia, where you have huge expanses of land and forests are being cleared here, here, here. Where do you send the police this month? If you're using helicopters, it's very expensive. Global Forest Watch helps them focus those efforts. It shows in near real time where forests are being lost. This month shows you where to go, where to take action. If you're a business leader, a company like Unilever or Nestle using soy, beef, palm oil as inputs, agricultural inputs into your products, you want to be sure that your suppliers are not destroying the rainforest, to put it simply. And they've made commitments to do that. Well, Global Forest Watch helps you keep an eye on those suppliers and see whether they're actually doing it. And if you're an NGO or a community leader, you can use Global Forest Watch to help see what others are doing in the forests around you as well.
There's been a lot of talk in the press about fires, for example, in this case, Indonesia. But around the world, these fires are not unique. They happen all the time. The deforestation does contribute to a part of that. How does it impact the economy of these governments? Because that's something that they're probably thinking about.
Well, if you take the case of the forest fires, for example, in Indonesia, Sumatra has had, again, very serious fires over the last few weeks. The schools have been closed for weeks. The airports have been closed. It pretty much shuts down the local economy completely. If you look at the fires in California and Australia, you see entire communities having to relocate because of these fires. Again, the economic impacts are phenomenal. And the impacts on the health of the people who live in these areas, breathing in the smog, the bonfire-like smoke that's billowing across their communities day after day, the impacts are terrific.
Is there a specific dollar figure, perhaps, that you can assign to the government or productivity that's lost because of these incidents?
Well, individual incidents can add up to tens of billions of dollars in losses to economies. I mean, Singapore last year for several weeks lost tourists, lost conventions. Thousands of people were in the emergency rooms because of terrifically bad air pollution due to the forest fires in neighboring Indonesia and Malaysia. So the impact was huge on the Singaporean government at that time.
People signed petitions. I'm sure a lot of businesses would agree with you, and governments as well. Are there specific actions that people or businesses can take aside from the government if they believe they want to do more?
Well, that's a very, very good question. I mean, governments are working hard to address these problems, but more needs to be done. So concerned citizens need to raise this issue with their governments. Business leaders need to adopt very responsible policies. We're only going to use palm oil or pulp and paper or beef that's come from an area where tropical forests were not destroyed, for example. And businesses are doing that partly because consumers, regular folks going into the supermarket, are saying, we care about this and we want you to do a better job.
That was Nigel Sizer, director of the Global Forest Initiative at the World Resource Institute. Now,